Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, today we are going to go ahead and talk about comparative statics. And we have already seen what Solow model is, how to go ahead and find the steady state in the Solow model. But today I want to take one step ahead and I want to talk about what happens when there is going to be an increase in the investment in the economy. So we know that investment was equal to savings, and savings was some proportion of income, है ना? Investment savings के बराबर है, savings income का कुछ proportion है. Now let us go ahead and assume that suppose there is increase in this savings rate, the amount of savings done by the households that has increased. So what will go ahead and what will happen? Now, when there is going to be increase in the savings of the people, it is going to go ahead and it is going to mean that there is going to be increase in the savings function. The savings function is going to go ahead and shift upwards. So that is the first thing that we are going to go ahead and we are going to do. We are going to go ahead and shift the savings function upwards. So see here, this was my initial savings into output. And since my savings has increased, the savings into output function has shifted upwards. People are saving more proportion of their income. Now what happens is that initially my steady state was achieved where this curve was intersecting this curve and hence the steady state level of capital was K star, right? Now since this curve has shifted upwards, we notice that the new steady state comes here and this will be the new level of the steady state level of capital. Now there is something very interesting that you can go ahead and look here. Look that at the old steady state level of capital, at the old steady state level of capital, what has happened? The amount of, because now this is my investment curve, right? And this orange curve is my depreciation plus labor growth rate curve, right? Now my economy doesn't have this curve. This is the curve of my economy, right? So at the old steady state level of capital, now investment per worker, that means this exceeds the n plus delta y. It means n plus delta, not y, k. K. It means that at the old steady state, now we have the increase in capital. Investment causes an increase in capital more than the decrease in capital. What is causing decrease in capital? Depreciation and the growth rate of labor. So the increase in capital is more than the decrease in capital, right? And because of that, over time, capital has to increase. So ye ho raha hai that over time, the steady state level of capital is increasing, right? So this is what happens when there will be increase in the savings rate, thereby causing increase in investment, right? This is exactly written here. Read it out. The steady state value of capital increases, right? So since small k is increasing, we know that increase in small k is called as capital deepening process, right? So there is capital deepening that is taking place. अब क्या हो रहा है? Capital deepening हो रही है. Okay. From the production function, higher level of capital per worker will be associated with higher level of per capita output. Thus, economy will be richer than before. Now, you remember that what was our production function? Our production function was y is equal to k to the power alpha, right? So, if this k has increased, k at steady state has increased, so won't y also increase? Y will also increase. अगर ये बढ़ रहा है and y is k to the power alpha, so y will also increase. And if Y will increase, that means in a way the GDP per capita is increasing, right? So the country will be richer. There will be increased income. The country will be richer than before. The second thing that we can go ahead and we can look at is increase in the population growth rate. That means increase in the value of N. Now, if you notice, the N value is depicted through this curve. ये वाला curve N को represent कर रहा है. So when there is going to be increase in the value of N, this curve will shift upwards. ये curve upward shift हो जाएगा. And you notice that this is what it represents, N dash plus delta K. Okay. Now, initially, if you notice, initially when N was my rate of growth of labor, जब N rate से हम grow कर रहे थे, then my steady state level of capital was achieved here at K star. ये मेरा steady state था. ठीक है. Now what has happened is that this is no more my curve. ठीक है. This is my new curve. Economy का ये curve है. Right? So at this level of capital, if you realize, अगर मैं नए कर्व के हिसाब से देखूं, you will see that this curve is representing decrease in small k. ये कर्व represent करता है investment, increase in k. When decrease and increase are equal, जहां पे ये दो कर्व्स intersect करते हैं, that is steady state. तो अब at the old level of steady state, you see that decrease is more than increase. So decrease is greater than increase at the old level. ये जो decrease curve दिखा रहा है, this curve is above this curve. So decrease is more than increase. So what will happen? Over time, per capita capital will decrease. Over time, the steady state value of capital will decrease. और वही हो रहा है. We see that the new steady state is achieved here. Now, think in terms of economics. Why is this happening? क्यों हो रहा है ये? So this is happening because we know that now there is more labor, there is more population. So if there is more labor, then the same amount of capital has to be distributed among more people. है ना? And if the same amount of capital needs to be distributed among more people, so every individual will get less capital. हर एक को कम capital मिलेगा, right? So per capita capital at steady state will fall. And we know y is equal to k to the power alpha. So अगर ये k it will decline, then this y should also decline. So this y is also declining, right? Now read it out. The increase in population implies same amount of capital needs to be distributed among more labor. So जब population बढ़ गया, the same capital is now being distributed among more people. Steady state level of capital falls, hence output falls, economy becomes poor. So we now understand two things. दो चीजें हमें पता चलती हैं. We understand that when there is going to be increase in the savings rate, it is going to make the economy richer. And when there is going to be decrease in the, increase in the population growth rate, it will make the economy poorer. अगर population बढ़ेगी तो economy poorer हो जाएगी. अगर savings rate बढ़ेगा, it will increase investment. When investment will increase, economy will become richer. Right? Okay. Now let us go towards the properties of the steady state. So what is steady state? How did we define steady state? We already have done this. Steady state was defined where change in per capita capital was 0. Our equation of change in capital was given by this, right? We had written that K dot is equal to investment minus N plus delta into K. We had derived this equation. We know that at steady state, this K dot will be 0. So Sy will be equal to N plus delta K. Now, there are multiple things that can be asked in exam. So the first thing जो वो पूछ सकते हैं will be find capital output ratio at steady state. So if I want to find the capital output ratio, it is simple. If I have SY is equal to N plus delta K, so K by Y will be S divided by N plus delta. Second, if we know that Y is small k to the power alpha, this is what we had derived. तो इस y की जगह पर I can plug this small k to the power alpha and I will get k upon k to the power alpha is equal to s upon n plus delta. So this will give me k to the power 1 minus alpha is equal to s upon n plus delta. And you can find the value of steady state value of capital S upon n plus delta to the power 1 upon 1 minus alpha. Right? Step number 3. If they ask you find steady state value of output. So output is k to the power alpha. K is this. So output will be S upon n plus delta to the power alpha upon 1 minus alpha. This will be the value of y. So we can go ahead and we can find all three things. हम ये भी जान सकते हैं कि steady state level of capital कितना है, what is the steady state value of output, and what is the capital to output ratio. Okay. Now one question arises, why are some countries rich and other countries poor? ऐसा क्यों है कि कुछ countries rich हैं और कुछ countries poor हैं, right? So we have already tried to answer this question in a bit, right? So one, we know that richness and poorness, it depends on the savings rate and it depends on the population growth rate, right? So those countries which accumulate more capital per worker, मतलब जो invest ज्यादा करती हैं, हाँ, जब वो investment ज्यादा करती हैं तो उनका small k ज्यादा होता है. जब small k ज्यादा होता है, because y is a function of small k, y is more, right? So those countries which accumulate more capital per worker, they have more capital per worker, they will have more output per worker. उनका output per worker भी ज्यादा होगा. And if they will have more output per worker, they will be richer countries. Similarly, those countries which have high population growth rate, माने जिनका n high है, we have seen it will decrease capital per worker, so it will decrease the output level. If it will decrease the output level, then the country will become poorer, right? Then another thing which we want to go ahead and we want to understand is that when we have higher population growth, if I want that still my economy should be growing, then I can go ahead and complement with higher savings rate, with higher investment, right? Just for example, suppose that initially this is SY and this is N plus delta K. Now we know that there is an increase in population which is causing a decline in my capital. If I want to ensure that I have larger capital, what I can go ahead and do, I can increase the savings rate. So if I increase my savings rate, then I will be again able to increase my capital, right? So those economies which are growing, which have growing population, right? In order to keep this small k constant, they would need higher savings. उनको अपना savings को बढ़ाना पड़ेगा. Then they will be able to go ahead and they will be able to ensure that they still keep their growth constant, right? Now we have seen that in the last class that what is capital widening and capital deepening, right? Try to understand that capital deepening So if you just revisit the concept once that we had done in the last class, you will understand that one talks about only capital K, whereas other talks about the small k, right? Now, so let me just show you this concept once. Okay, not sure where I had written. So capital deepening and widening are two different things, right? Now, the aim of any economy, even if I go ahead and grow capital K, because continuously my population is increasing, I may not be able to grow small k. I may not be able to grow capital per labor, right? So even though I am able to increase the capital in my economy, because of growing populations, especially in the developing country, it becomes very difficult for any economy to increase the value of small k. Small k ko badhana becomes extremely difficult. So that is what that point is going ahead and saying. Here, got it. Right? So you had seen that whenever small k changes, that is called as capital deepening. And when capital K changes, that is called as capital widening. Capital widening does not lead to growth. Remember, growth के लिए मेरे को small y increase करना जरूरी है. Small y will increase when small k will increase, right? So small k increases when there is a capital deepening process. जब capital deepening होता है, but capital deepening नहीं हो रहा यहाँ पे, right? The maximum that the countries are able to do is capital widening, but not capital deepening. ठीक है? So this is what is written here. Capital widening requirement makes deepening more difficult, right? So I am able to increase K, but I am increasing K because my labor is increasing. But I am not able to increase small k. क्योंकि I am just trying to complement this for this. When is my capital increasing? When there is more investment. So I am increasing my savings for more investment. But ये जो savings बढ़ रही हैं, these are only to complement. These are only because I am required to increase saving because my population is growing. Right? So this capital widening process is just because there is increase in population. But capital deepening becomes very difficult. क्योंकि population continuously बढ़ती जा रही है. So I am not able to increase this small k. And that is stopping the growth in my economy. Okay? So very important, try to understand the difference between deepening and widening. Okay? Now let us go ahead and let us talk about growth effect versus level effect. बहुत important है. My claim that in this model that we have studied till now, क्या model पढ़ा हमने? There were only two things. One, there was growth rate, growth of population, एक n factor था, and second, there was savings rate, and of course depreciation. जब हमें सिर्फ इतना मॉडल दिया हो इन दिस काइंड ऑफ मॉडल, माय क्लेम is that there is no per capita growth rate. No per capita growth rate means what? That there is no growth rate of capital per unit labor, capital per capita. Small k is not growing. Growth of small k is 0. And this is very easy to prove. देखो, what did we say? What is our small k? क्या था small k? Small k, changes in small k were written as sy plus minus n plus delta k. Right? So small k dot by k can be written as sy by k minus n plus delta. Right? Now, what is the definition of growth? How do we define growth? Growth is defined as change in any variable by the original value of the variable. So, ये वाला जो factor है, I can just call this as growth rate of k is equal to s y by k minus n plus delta. And what happens at steady state, beta? At steady state, we keep k dot equal to 0. So automatically k dot by k will be 0. So it means growth rate of small k will be 0. So my claim is that in this model, there is no growth of capital per labor, per unit labor or per capita. Small k का growth rate 0 है. Okay. Now, first just understand, then I will go to the notes. Then understand that we know that small y was k to the power alpha. So can I take log on both sides? Log y will be alpha log k. If I differentiate with respect to time, I will get this. So I will go ahead and I will get 1 by y dot is equal to alpha k dot by k. माने growth rate of y will be alpha growth rate of small k. But ये जो small k है इसमें there is no growth rate. This growth rate is 0. So if this growth rate is 0, I will get growth rate of y will be alpha into 0. That means 0. So small